Mzansi for sure.
Hello and welcome to The Big Debate, coming to you live on SABC 2, SABC News Channel 404 and SAFM. We're also live on SABC News YouTube. I'm Ridi Tlhabi. All week the power was off. We are concerned about how to cook, keep safe in the dark and get work done. But if we mess up our energy plans, we may have to worry about thousands of job losses or being permanently in the dark. We might be without drinking water and food if the effects of climate change are not held at bay. We are heavily dependent on coal power stations plagued with cost overruns and corruption. Emissions from those power stations are causing temperatures to rise and weather to become violent. Beira in Mozambique is underwater as we speak after Cyclone Idai. South Africa had a severe drought, you'll remember, pushing up our food prices, all made worse by climate change. Now, do we have a plan to keep the lights on, to generate electricity in a way that doesn't destroy livelihoods or our living environment? And can we get safe, affordable, clean energy to all our citizens? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Eskom board member Nelly Magubane, Busi Radebe, senior economist at Nedbank, Irvin Jim, General Secretary of NUMSA, Marco Malikalakala of EarthLife Africa, investigative reporter Kevin Bloom, and Tracy Davies, a corporate accountability specialist at Just Share. Now, on The Big Debate tonight, we also have energy expert Chris Yelland, Professor Patrick Bond from Wits, and Happy Kambule of Greenpeace. And in our audience, most importantly, I think, at least for me, mine workers, mining communities, students, learners, residents and activists from Gauteng, Mpumalanga and across South Africa. Welcome to you all. And you at home can make your voices heard on social media. Today's show is searching for long-term energy solutions. We did invite the Minister of Trade and Industry, Rob Davis, a senior minister in the economy cluster. He pulled out at the very last minute due to an emergency. We also asked for another minister to come and account for government decisions, but we're told Eskom would join our panel instead. Eskom is not government, by the way. All right, our poll today is, should we support Eskom, protect coal jobs, prioritize renewable energy, that's solar, wind, or it's not that simple? Vote now, it's free, remember? But before we start, take a look at this.
Workers in Hendrina are angry. John Rigule has been working as an underground coal extractor for 12 years. He hasn't been paid for 5 months.
kamasipalata sikwazi ukuthola igezi sihlala ezindlini ezimnyama mawukweleta igezi abakhona ukukuthengisela igezi ukweleta igezi on Schatfall manje on Schatfall.
Jean-Ri has 4 kids to support. He was recently told he'd been outsourced.
Saqala ukusafara ukufika kwedlenki idlenko yasafarisa kwathi yamuva idlenko kwangena amagupta kwaba worse.
Jean-Ri blames the present Eskom crisis on mismanagement and corruption at coal mines.
Ilo shedding abakhulume iqiniso igovernment. It's not ukuthi ikhoswa ukuthi iScom ayinamari or what bane problem bona.
Look, the problems run long and deep.
Energy expert Chris Yelland says the problems go beyond coal shortages in the mines.
There's been a lot of unplanned breakdowns of Eskom's existing generation fleet, number one. Number two, the new generation capacity at Medupi and Kusile is experiencing delays and problems.
We want Eskom against the building of Eskom Medupi and Eskom Kusile. We did indicate that this mega coal-fired power plant was a recipe for corrupt activities to take place, and we've seen that corrupt activities have taken place.
Activists point to bribes paid by Hitachi to an ANC-linked company for the contract to build the power stations. So should the projects be stopped?
We have got huge investments in coal mines and in coal-fired power plants, and I think we should allow them to run to the end of life to give us enough time to do a just transition away towards newer, cleaner, cheaper technologies, in other words, are more climate-friendly.
Climate change is a reality in southern Africa. The Mozambican city of Beira is underwater. Climate refugees are at South Africa's borders.
We hear a lot of people speaking in the media about how we must just simply move on to this wonderful new technology in renewable energy. And yet nobody seems to care about the fact that there is no social plan for the people of Mpumalanga as we hurtle in this direction.
NUMSA spokesperson Pagamile Hlubi Majola says government's procurement of renewable energy will harm communities.
You're going to have 100,000 jobs lost in Mpumalanga in the coal value chain.
She also points to nepotism in the procurement process.
For more than half of the population to live in abject poverty, and for a government to pursue a renewable energy program which frankly only benefits itself, its cronies and relatives of Ramaphosa.
NUMSA believes the current renewables program is a step towards privatization.
That for us is the way in which they're already introducing private players without having consulted anybody, I might add.
If the independent power producers were set up in a way that ordinary people would be able to create their own cooperatives or generate electricity as individuals, feeding into the grid and benefit from that, that is the package that we would support.
One could give tax benefits to companies and to buildings and to commercial entities and to farmers and even to individual houses if they were to install these systems on their rooftop, because it would be helping Eskom and it would be helping the country.
Back in Hendrina, workers have a tough message for politicians.
Into engiyibonayo ugovernment uphakama mase kufa umuntu mawusakhuluma ugovernment akasondeli ku. Kungako ngithi mina anginamntwana ozokuya evotini. Sizovota kanjani silambile?
All right, we're seeing how people's lives are affected. We'll get into that in just a moment. But Nelly Makubeni, let me start with you. As the world moves away from coal-powered stations, here we are in South Africa building two of the largest in the world. Climate change is not in the future. It is now. Beira is now, underwater now. We experienced a 3-year drought in South Africa. Does Eskom care about our future?
Oh, absolutely. And if we will recall, is that so far we've tried to make sure that we diversify our energy mix. But you must recall that Medupi and Kusile were started in 2004. Unfortunately, there's been cost overruns, there's been delays, there's been design problems. Hence, therefore, that's why it's taking so long. But definitely, as any South African, Eskom does care about what happens to people. But also, more than anything else, Eskom cares about those jobs, the coal jobs that are out there at Mpumalanga and also somewhere in Limpopo. So that's basically what we are trying to have a balance at the end of the day.
I know that you've been on the Eskom board for just a year. I appreciate that. And some of this rot, a lot of it started way before your time. But it's hard for us to believe that you actually care, because as Eskom, you are constantly asking for 10 of your polluting stations to be exempt from regulations when it comes to clean energy and carbon dioxide emissions. If you really cared, you wouldn't be doing that. Again this year, you asked to be exempt from those regulations. That doesn't sound like a company that cares about climate change.
Actually, at the moment, if you recall, Eskom's biggest challenge is to keep the lights on. Now, to make sure that we comply with those air quality standards, it's going to cost anything between 300 and 400 billion, of which we do not have at the moment. In fact, we're basically trying so hard to keep the lights on and make sure that the economy continues to grow. So that's the challenge that we have.
We'll talk about why Eskom doesn't have money in just a moment. But Makoma, you won an award. You used the courts to try and stop the nuclear deal, and you got an award for that. You are against coal and you embrace renewable energy. What about jobs? What happens to miners?
Okay, I think for the consideration on climate change, South African government, Eskom, and all the other energy generation entities knew long ago that there is a need for us to move away from coal generation of electricity to generate electricity in a form that is low carbon. This has been there. It's not new that we got the report last year from the IPCC that we've got 12 years now. This is something that has been known for quite a long time. The just transition towards low carbon electricity generation, it's the way to go. And this is not a new term. This has been a term that has been there, and people have spoken.
What do we mean by this just transition?
A just transition, we mean a fair, honest, non-discriminatory change from business as usual towards a new form of generating electricity. That's what we call a just transition. And from a just transition, we will be able to get people will be able to get jobs. The jobs that we worried about that would be lost, actually they won't be lost if we had a plan, because one of the principles of a just transition is to have a plan to reskill workers whilst they're still at those particular industries, so that we can move towards a just transition that is low carbon, and that would be a mitigating factor towards climate change, which we are seeing the impacts thereof. You've just listed Mozambique drought, Mozambique
the cyclone, yes?
The cyclone now.
It died.
So that is an indicator that we are in trouble.
Look, Irvin, you are concerned about jobs, and I don't think there's any right-thinking South African who wants people to lose their jobs, but we're facing some bitter confrontations with reality. You are concerned about the jobs of a few 100,000 people. What about the rest of us? Should our environment be degraded? Should we lose our future, our health, and so on? And doesn't Magoma have a point when she says that we knew that this was going to happen, we should have prepared more? So to come now and say we're going to lose job, we knew about this a long time ago.
But I must say a few things. The first one, the lives of the people of Mpumalanga do not constitute a statistic that you can just press and do away with them, because suddenly you must look good to COP17, to COP21. In fact, all those conferences insisted that there must be a just transition. And there's a lot of English, I already smell it here, when it comes to this just transition. And I think before I deal with that English, it's important to say a couple of few things. Because Chris Yelland and many others, and many at UCT, you know, they are proponents. And I must say some of them, I hate to be racist, some of them are white males. And I doubt whether they really have got to the space that they can speak on behalf of people of Mpumalanga in the manner in which they have been so ruthless when it comes to this question of moving from fossil fuels to renewables. And as a union, we've been very firm and very consistent. And I think we need to be understood that we are not against a movement from fossil fuels and towards low carbon emissions, not at all. But we're very firm that this country, what it needs, which never happened, and I've challenged everybody here, we need a debate in this country, a democratic, transparent debate.
Let's attempt one here.
No,
What do you
I'm
want as
I'm saying that debate must be about what energy mix do we need to move from fossil fuels to the low carbon emission that we're talking about. As Nomsa, when we say just transition, we mean that those 100,000 workers of Mpumalanga, some people might not trust KPMG, you know, with the Gupta agenda that we have experienced, but CSIR actually arrived on the same numbers, that if you are going to privatize, and we got a smart privatization. The ANC government said there's no privatization. I will tell you, Reddy, they're basically privatizing Eskom. They're not debating with anyone.
Hold that
thought.
thought.
They are doing, they are closing power stations and replace
The
them
decommissioning
with the
of power.
IPPs.
We'll talk about that in just a moment, because that's a very important matter. Just hold that thought, Irvin. Eskom borrowed over 50 billion rands from the World Bank to pay for Medupi and Kusile. The loans are paid back by every Eskom consumer through our electricity bill. Now, given the corruption and the cost overruns, should we be responsible for paying back the loans? When we come back, we follow the money. Don't go away.
Her weird family and cray-cray friends bring you another cheeky season.
Everything new, brand new. Well.
Into zam ke le.
Thandeka bengikhuluma noMaziputhe efonini uthi ucela space bag. Ithembe mem, ha ke tshepe motho. Awe, nkampa ka tshepa lejwe. Yini? Size ukufunda la esikoleni, are you aware? Yeah.
Eyamugele. Catch Thandeka's Diary Mondays at 7:30 only on SABC1 Mzansi for sure.
In my time, I've truly seen it all firsthand. Angizwanga, ngizibonele ngalawam amehlo. Going through my photographs and reflecting on my memory box really brings back many life experiences that are bittersweet and humbling. In this, my homeland, I've entertained tourists and offshore traders. I've evolved from dealing with the battering system to trading foreign exchange. I've traveled to the ends of the world and tasted a diversity of culinary palates. To outsiders, I have lived alongside wild animals, tamed some, and collected livestock as wealth. So my memory box is overflowing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bragging, but in fact, I'm breaking and hurting deep down inside of this heart of mine. Why? What for? I hear you ask yourself, my fellow Africans, friends and family. The images I have of me are those of the point of view of my onlooker, not those of myself, the subject at hand. I'm choking and suffocating at the chalice those anthropologists and filmmakers tie around me as some sort of grand name tag. Stories have been made and told of me, not of my own words. Films and graphic images have entertained millions of audiences at my expense.
When you put 5 girls against 5 guys, of course it's going to be lit.
Andile, what's the next challenge?
Witness all the fun, tension and laughs as we see how well friends know each other to win a luxury cruise. Join us as we bring the excitement every weekend at 6 p.m. only on SABC1 Mzansi for sure.
All right, welcome back to the big debate on energy and our economy. Now, Eskom has almost R500 billion of debt. That's almost as much as our health and education budget combined. We plan to discuss the loans just now. But first, I do want to talk to the people whose share of that money is very small. Workers from Hendrina, who featured in our opening film, if you remember. John Regule mentioned he has not been paid for 5 months. 5 months. Let's talk to John Ree about circumstances at the Tegeta mine and how that impacts families and the power stations. John, you're here. Where's the microphone? Do we have a microphone? You can speak Zulu, it's fine, I'll translate. Okay. So tell us about life at home. How has this impacted you? And what do you think caused the problems?
Sanibonani boss. NgingiJohn Regule ngisebenza e-underground esayidini lase Optimum. Ngizwa ubuhlungu masiyohlala 5 months singaholi. Number 1, bezane nama excuses sikhiphe ilahle emgodini. Ilahle naselifikile liseyitimelweni selitransportwa kuthiwe kulahleke izitimela. Azifikanga la eziya khona. Sabekezela ekulahlekweni kweyitimela. Akekho buyile kithi wathi itimela uzitholile zilahlekile, ubani ochajiwe ngale itimela bezilahlekile zithola kanti.
Ubani othi itimela zilahlekile? Management, Eskom, ubani the mine?
Management izakithi yebo ezeThageta ne. Sine manager yethu. I-manager yethu ichera i-meeting ne Optimum.
Sharp.
From Optimum udeliver kithi ukuthi kwenzekani. abuye imanager shuthi lamalahle siwakhiphayo aqonda straight eOptimum.
Sure.
Nase sikhipha amalahle imanager ibuye ngama excuse makucala ukuthi asiholi ne bathi izitimela zilahlekile. Uma ngale isitimela sesilahleka sesinamalahle phezulu sine production okuzwisa ubhlungu singabasebenzi basemgodini ukwehla uye emgodini lephasi if uvaleleka lapha akusisimple ukuthi uphume uphilile.
Okay.
Ngokuriska ngokuthi sisebenzela abantu abethu asina way out yiwo umsebenzi esitrainele wona kuyi must ukuthi siye khona.
All right. Okay, let's just translate that for those of you who didn't hear. I mean, so the last part was about something that you and I care about. We want to be safe. We want to live for our children. So John here is reminding us once again the risk of going down under and the dangers that you face. But my head is spinning because he's just told us that day in and day out they go underground, they extract the coal, and they get told that the train that is transporting the coal has gone missing with coal on it. I smell something. Somebody got that coal, somebody sold it to someone, and somebody made money out of it. We'll talk about that corruption in just a moment, but Nelly, these are the workers. These are the people who keep our lights on. These are the people who give Eskom relevance. What do you say to them? What do you say to them?
What I can say is that it's tragic. It's tragic because for the past 10 years or more, Eskom has been looted. Now, when Eskom got looted, that mine went on business rescue, Optimum. And when it went on business rescue, obviously there was a contract before with Eskom, a long-term contract that made sure that there was a constant supply of coal. But with Optimum coming in, obviously they were not able to actually supply Eskom with coal. So what we are experiencing now is actually the sins of the past. What we're experiencing now is what happened in the past.
Kevin, I want to bring you in here because we've just seen so starkly the cost of the corruption, the cost of the mismanagement. We know all about the stuff that's coming out of the Zondo Commission, but we knew about it. Glencore pushed out and a Gupta mine. Eskom actually gave a Gupta-owned company money to buy Optimum. I think it was about 508 million rand in prepayment for coal. I mean, where have you heard anything like that? This is the cost of the corruption.
So I think we need to go back to a World Bank loan that was for 3.75 billion and was made in April 2010. The president of the World Bank, Robert Zoellick, knew at the time, because the best investigative reporters in this country had been writing about it since 2007. Then Amabungani had been writing about this. And it was the fact that Chancellor House, which was an investment arm of the ANC, had a 25% stake in Hitachi Power Africa, who got the 40 billion rand tender for the boilers at Medupi and Kusile. Now that 3.75 billion loan from the World Bank, at the time, there were massive international protests. There were 50 local groups, and NUMSA was one of them.
And in fact, the current Minister of Public Enterprise was Finance Minister and wrote an op-ed to the Washington Post justifying
Pravin Gordhan wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post in April 2010, which was the month the loan went through, that coal was the way to go for South Africa, knowing at the time as well that this was a very dirty deal.
In fact, it was repeated at the mining indaba by the minerals Minister Jeff Radebe, who said that we're going to go to clean coal technologies, and we haven't seen any of that. But on the World Bank loan, yeah?
So this World Bank loan, in the last 3 weeks, World Bank has basically had prosecution from immunity from prosecution forever.
But Patrick Bond, I want to bring you in here because it's quite interesting to me that David Malpass, who's the World Bank presidential nominee, was asked about the World Bank, and he said a lot of their loans are riddled with corruption. He was asked by Maxine Waters in the US. They're riddled by corruption, and she asked which case in particular, and he mentioned South Africa. That is problematic. We are paying for that right now.
Yes, it's actually the only case he mentioned, and it means as he starts his World Bank job this month as the president, because the prior president has just sort of surprisingly resigned, there's big doubts about this new president because he's a Trump appointee, and he's not a particularly good economist.
It's not progressive.
No, he's one of these establishment characters from what was called Bear Stearns, a big investment bank. He made lots of mistakes, but he was right about the corruption. And when he did answer in the U.S. House of Representatives that the World Bank sends first-class ticketed lenders to make loans that never do anything useful for ordinary people, he was right when he was asked which country. He said South Africa. Now that loan, to me, suggests we should be considering lender liability, that they need to have some basically, I think, cancellations. They should
we pay that debt?
If I don't know, Nelly, you're from Eskom. Have you people not talked about your huge hole in your balance sheet, 420 billion?
That's, I mean, the debt is 13% of Eskom's total 420 billion rand debt.
If you refuse to pay because you're now a new clean Eskom, right? Because the old dirty Eskom was in bed with the old dirty World Bank, right? This would be a justifiable point that I think people around the world would say, you know, this World Bank needs a lesson in not making these corrupt loans for coal-fired power plants.
We'll give you a chance to respond. Okay, hold that thought. We'll give you a chance. We'll give you a chance to respond. And we're going to ask, is there a way we can have a just transition? Evan Jim mentioned that earlier on, from coal to clean, safe, renewable energy in a way that protects workers' livelihoods and gives homes and communities access to affordable, reliable energy. Sounds too good to be true? Don't go away.
Complicated cases. Your black friends might be running this country, but I'm still the government on Bitterhoek. The poor child.
This kid was electrocuted by your fence.
Sorry, it's his own fault.
I put it to you that you have a personal interest in this case.
Under Section 300 of the Criminal Procedures Act 51 of 1977.
I urge the court to find in favor of the plaintiff.
The court finds the accused guilty.
Dedicated lawyers dig to the bottom and everyone gets peace. It's a pleasing judgment and it's justice for all on SABC Anko, DSTV channel 156.
On the 7th of February, the season premiere of One Day Leader is coming to a TV screen near you. One Day Leader Season 7 is at 9 p.m. on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure.
Judges, are you sure of your choices today?
One Day Leader, Thursdays at 9 p.m. on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was ons almal was ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig waar probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke swa ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e se makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, channel 404.
Welcome back to the big debate on energy and Eskom and the economy, or rather the future of our economy. So much has been said today about renewable energy, in particular the procurement of solar and wind energy by government through independent power producers who own wind and solar farms. Now, trade unions and activists have said these projects are subject to cronyism. We should note that Patrice Motsepe, who featured in our earlier clip, recently held a press briefing to say that he is addressing those perceptions. But who should be the owners of renewable projects? Take a look at this. This is a factory in Johannesburg with its own power station on its roof. Sunny Morgan helps small businesses, communities and households to install their own renewables. It's a local, ESCOM-free and corruption-free model.
Sources and cleaner energy. If we don't do that, we're going to have a major impact, not only in South Africa but worldwide. So these inverters are directly giving us the power from the roofs. They are solar inverters. There's legislative uncertainty about the green economy, about feed-in tariffs, about own consumption. So the law is not properly enacted to make this an enabling environment for the green economy to grow.
All right, let's go straight to our audience. Francina, you've got a question about this.
Yes. Why is the government not investing into renewable energy that is socially owned? Because we need the community that will do their own solar panel to create jobs for the communities, to get jobs and get the energy that is clean and affordable for the poor communities, because now we are affected by load shedding.
All right, it's a pity that the government is not here, because a lot of their policy positions do need to be challenged. But Busisiwe, I'm going to bring you in here. You are an economist at the Green Bank. We see when we visit a branch, there are all sorts of plants. Our credit cards are green, and your branches are powered by solar. But just on that question, but also adding my own, that is this just marketing on your part? How committed are you to renewable energy? Because you are heavily invested in fossil.
I mean, we are very committed.
Fossil projects, I mean.
We're very committed to it. You would have heard that recently we've said we're not going to invest any more new sort of money when it comes to fossil fuels. So we are moving away. I think the big problem here is we don't have, as South Africans, like a long-term view of this thing. Right, we usually have short-term things. So right now, sort of the enemy sort of in the room apparently is renewable energy, but there needs to be a balance about these things, really. So the first thing is we need baseload energy, and that baseload energy is sort of, it's coal. Right now, we need to sort of support ESCOM. We can't just switch that off at the moment. We cannot do that type of thing at all, because most of electricity comes from coal. So you have to have that idea that you can't switch that off at all at the moment.
I understand that, but on Francina's point about, I mean, why is it not this large-scale investment and loans and some concessions being made to cooperatives, to community ownership and so on? In the same way that I walk into the Green Bank and I apply for a loan, why can't people come to Nedbank for exactly what she described?
You can come for sort of, we support a lot of those projects, and we do actually pump a lot of money into those projects, but it is a bank, really, and the business of banks...
You're looking for your profits.
We're looking for our profits, because it is a bank. So the business of business is to do business, and that's where government comes in, and we need to know why they are sort of reluctant to do this type of thing, and they need to answer for that, and I think there are vested interests there that we need to look at.
Irvin, Jim, it's a bank.
Well, I think the serious difficulty we were talking about here with my comrade at the back, how did it happen? We can debate about the land. The land question is a big issue. It was sold out. We were sold out by the negotiated settlement. The land is not back. But how did we lose the sun? How did we lose the wind? How did these capitalists... And I'm very frank.
We should be leading in terms of...
How does capitalists suddenly own the sun? Which, I mean, the sun. That's right. How do they own the wind? I mean, we need to firm up what he's saying. We need a socially owned renewable sector on behalf of South African...
You're not doing it because you're scared of competition as ESCOM? You're not supporting these? You had some subsidies for geyser installations and so on. You abandoned that somewhere along the way. You're scared of competition. But my question would be, how can a company that is technically insolvent, or parastatal that is technically insolvent, 420 billion rand in debt, be responsible for 90% of the energy that we need? Why are you supporting, not supporting such initiatives?
At the end of the day, what we need to be able to remember is that until recently, there was a pushback from ESCOM around private power. It didn't matter who actually owns it. But now, what we are looking at now, and which we believe that we need, because at the moment, our fleet is not performing so great. So obviously, we need more power. We need more supply to be connected to the grid. Well, so we are open to those kind of suggestions.
Well, there was a commitment to nuclear energy under the lost 9 years, or what is it, wasted 9 years, whatever it is. Your focus is always on responsible investment and for all the concerns of the community to be taken into account. We've just heard that business shareholders, they're interested in profit. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? I'm sure this frustrates you a lot.
Sure. I mean, the transition is already happening. The question is if it's going to be just, or if all the same people who have lost throughout our history are going to lose again. And I agree, there needs to be a proper national conversation. We need some actual leadership on this issue in South Africa. We don't have any at the moment. And the people making our energy decisions are government, the fossil fuel industry, and the financial industry. And they all only care about the short term. So if we leave it up to them to make decisions about this transition, it will be a disaster.
Chris Yelland, what do you say? I mean, often the workers are portrayed as people who are resistant to change. And NUMSA, I hope we've given you an opportunity to clarify that you're not opposed to renewables. You're saying you want cooperatives, you want locally owned and initiated projects and so on, and you don't want this dirty capitalism that we've seen in many of the deals, including the World Bank deal that Patrick Bond and Kevin spoke about. Kevin, how do you answer it?
I must say I agree that there is
Chris, I beg your pardon.
There's a lacking of social ownership of renewable energy, and it seems to be all in the hands of IPPs. A question that I must ask to NUMSA is, why don't you invest in renewable energy? Do you have any projects that you would like to invest in IPPs? And also municipalities. Why should municipalities be prevented in law from owning their own generation? Why is Eskom the sole buyer of energy in South Africa? Why can't municipalities also build generation plant? Why can't NUMSA build generation plant? You have many investments at NUMSA. You have a whole investment company. Why aren't you investing in clean energy?
Irvin?
Well, I mean, I guess anybody can always throw that question. The bottom
it's a relevant one, though.
No. Here's an issue. The ANC government, which is why now we have got the Workers' Party, has no agenda to transform South Africa's minerals, energy, and finance complex as we know it. At the center of that is the question of energy. When they go to make commitment to COP17, to COP21, that we will just have we will privatize energy in South Africa. Whom did they consult? Where do workers got this money that Chris Yelland think that they have? When in fact, when they think about those very workers, they think that those workers deserve a 20 rand an hour. And I'm not saying this project could be coordinated, what he's saying, by a government that has got an agenda to basically first defend the current capacity for manufacturing, secondly, to basically champion industrialization to create more jobs. As we speak, we not have the luxury. In fact, I mean, we must ask the question, if you look in 2018, the IPP office basically went to the portfolio committee. They were presenting on behalf of the energy department, energy mix that this country needs. Who elected them?
Let's leave it there then. When we return, we get the results. We get the results of the poll. You're watching The Big Debate. Don't go away.
Well, welcome please for a regal southern songstress, Yvonne Chaka Chaka.
When everybody wanted to be doctors and nurses, I stood up and I said I want to be white.
Oh.
The late Joe Slovo called me the Jewish Zulu.
I think it's very sad these days, or I mean, for a long while, that a lot of women
blame this on the guys because this is a plot by the women against the women.
We are socialists. Yes, sure. All of us.
Be intrigued by hitting topics on the couch with people of the South and stay cultivated as they grace you with cultural entertainment at its level best on stage. Make a date with Dali Tambo as he profiles everyone from all walks of life on SABC Encore DSTV channel 156.
In a UN report, scientists say climate change is getting worse.
1/3 of our food sources for the population come out of the ocean.
We spoke to people who have been directly affected.
We have lost a lot of cattle. Gemsbok vlakte,
Tosca gebied and Jakkalskop, everywhere you will see there's animals dying.
I've lost 2 of my cattle this January.
Africa's demand for clean drinking water is rising.
Drinking water is a top priority.
The next day when the water comes back, it's dirty.
I have implemented a level 5 water restriction, effective immediately.
Environmentalists seek solution to preserve the planet.
This is Cape Kirpa, which is also one of the endemic species that is only found within the Western Cape, so it occurs nowhere else in the world except in our water systems.
We've heard it many times from female entrepreneurs that they aren't taken seriously, and Future Females is a worldwide network of women.
So we're creating a platform where these women come and they collaborate and they meet each other.
Have the Civil Aviation Authority announced when they'll be making some announcement with regard to findings?
The Chief Executive Officer of Ethiopian Airlines said they do not even know the magnitude of the situation.
Bring us up to speed with regard to the latest developments.
We now know there was a football official, there was a journalist, there were university professors.
Koko said his hands are clean and his detractors have ulterior motives.
South Africans have been solely done that Machela Koko had conflict of interest.
Our election website here on SABC is now live.
On the 7th of February, the season premiere of One Day Leader is coming to a TV screen near you. One Day Leader Season 7 is at 9 p.m. on SABC1 Mzansi for sure.
Judges, are you sure of your choices today?
One Day Leader, Thursdays at 9 p.m. on SABC1 Mzansi for sure.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the big debate on energy and the future of our economy, coming to you on SABC2, SABC News Channel 404 and SAFM. Well, the results are in, and this is how you voted. From just over 12,000 votes, 58% say we should protect coal jobs, while 30% voted that we should focus on renewable energy. 12%, however, say it is not that simple. Okay, we've got a question from the audience. Ulrich, you want to ask something?
Yes, good afternoon.
Can you put the microphone right in front of you?
Good evening, everyone. I would just like to know, why should we allow that these corrupt ESCOM executives steal the money, and then the onus is put on government to tax the taxpayers in order to get that debt back? Is a public protector not in order to go after all of these corrupt individuals? Like, we've had 12 CEOs in the past 10 years, and not all of them went back with books in balance. Why don't we go collect the money from the ones who've stolen it instead of letting us on the ground pay for it? Thank you.
Nelly, I mean, that's fair. I do remind everyone that you've been a board member for a year, but the question is relevant in as far as the oversight of the board is concerned. Every year, financial year, there's ESCOM or any parastatal going with a begging bowl to taxpayers, mind you. The Tegeta Optimum Glencore issue, where was the board at that time? How could such large-scale corruption be allowed, yet executives get away with it? How can we trust that you're going to do things differently?
Well, first and foremost, we've got reputations. Our personal reputations are at stake. We have careers behind us, which actually indicate that we have proper track records. So for me, going to sit on the ESCOM board, it's not a job. It's actually a public service.
You are an engineer, am I right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. It's actually a public service. So for me, I don't see myself getting my hand in a
but
cookie jar.
Generally the institutional responsibility, because South Africans have been here over and over again, not you personally, but just ESCOM, you know, starting on a clean slate. I have a problem with that term because it's as if there's no history and there's no context. Money is lost. Workers are losing their jobs. It can't just be business as usual.
Of course not. Definitely.
Are you going to go after those people who stole from ESCOM?
We already have. Actually, we have given their names to the Hawks because they
high-profile prosecutions. You push for that.
There is mound of evidence that we have given both to the Hawks and the NPA, because the SIU has done a lot of work.
Will you even go after people who are politically connected? The Hitachi deal, Hitachi Powerhouse Africa. And by the way, let's remind our viewers that even if the ruling party doesn't want to speak about it, Hitachi has just paid a fine in the US, $19 million US. You don't pay a fine if you're innocent. So what I'm asking is, if the players, those whose hands are dirty, are high profile, is Eskom going to push for their prosecution?
But Eskom is not a prosecuting authority.
Sure, but you can do your checks and balances.
We've done our work. We've collected all the evidence. We've given to the necessary authorities.
I appreciate that.
So at the moment, it's the authorities now that need to act, because all we can do is just to mine the information and give it to them.
Makoma, fair enough, clean slate. What are you asking for?
I think Ms. Makubane has been part of the Department of Energy. She's served for quite a long time in that department, so she may be familiar with some of the stuff that is happening, though it may not be part of her jurisdiction or what she was doing at that particular time. I think currently we know that there's one anti-corruption organization that has filed a case against past Eskom executives.
Yes.
And I think Ms. Makubane, you're very brave. I wouldn't have gone into there, especially when I knew what was happening when you were at the Department of Environment, and I applaud you for that. But however, I hope that in your hands, South Africans are going to get a reprieve. All the shenanigans, the fairy tales that we've heard from Eskom are no longer going to happen. And I think that's the way to go, transparency. But also the challenge that we want to put to you as South Africans is that we want to see a new Eskom that would fulfill its mission, that Eskom that would create decent jobs. That means move from your addiction to coal towards a low carbon energy development on renewable energy. But there's something that I wanted to add on the World Bank. When the loan was given to Eskom in 2010, ordinary South Africans, people like myself and you, were told of that the Eskom Medupi is being built for us to get uninterrupted electricity
and it will be clean
supply.
coal technology or something like that.
Yeah, uninterrupted electricity supply. But how many of us, including in this audience, have got access to that electricity? It's cost overruns, but the worst part of it is that when Eskom applied for the loan, they got the loan, there were environmental and social safeguards that were not respected. Medupi was built on people's graves.
Well, next time we hope that the government will come to the big debate and answer these questions. And the big question is, what should happen to Medupi and Kusile? We need to ask that particular question. We'll do so in just a moment. Joel, you've got a question, very quickly.
No, thanks. I like to ask this question. As ordinary people of South Africa, we just want to ask Eskom, when are they going to finish up this saga of load shedding? Because it only affected the poor ordinary people who are at the low rate of life. So then we want to ask Mama Leni that, when are you going to end up this saga? Because for now, people are at home not knowing whether they can able to watch this debate. So then the last thing is that, can you please tell the ordinary citizens that when are you going to finish up this saga?
All right, load shedding, it's part of our future. And it's not just the inconvenience of being without lights. I'm sure we know small businesses are shutting down. People are being let off work. We need to remember the social impact of load shedding. Nelly?
Yes. The Minister of Public Enterprises and the Chairman of the Board had a press conference on the 19th of March. And in that press conference, they indicated that we need at least the next 2 weeks to be able to look at the magnitude of the problem, because it has become very clear that we are having a situation where the power is lost and we do not know what really happened. So, in other words, there is that measure of unpredictability in terms of power.
Okay. You can finish your point, yeah?
Yes, I would like to finish it first. However, what I can assure you, which the team assured me, is that at least next week there won't be load shedding.
Chris, do you buy that? You happy with the information that you know? Next week, you heard that. Hey, she didn't commit herself to next year or next month. It's just next week.
I think the line between no load shedding and load shedding is very thin. And it just takes an unfortunate coincidence of events, of unplanned outages, for us to cross the line from no load shedding to load shedding. And I think we're going to have load shedding for at least the next 6 months to 1 year, intermittently, on and off, just depending on whether we cross this line or not.
So what should happen to Medupi and Kusile?
I think a really detailed study needs to be done by not Eskom, because Eskom is emotionally committed to this project.
What do you say? What do you say, Tracy? They should stop building them now. In fact, the chairman of ESCOM actually hinted at that and asked, should we stop? Should we discontinue with that? And there was Meridian Economics that said, and Evan, this is a question for you as well, that said that if we discontinue I think it was Unit 5 and 6 of Kusile, if we stop work on that, we could save money, about 15 billion rand or 17 billion rand. And they mentioned as well, what would happen if we were to just go back to the drawing table and just shut down some of the units and decommission some of the power stations?
I think I must be honest that as a union we have lost hope, both to the board, from the board and to the current senior management of ESCOM. To be honest, I heard you asking her qualification. I respect what she said. But from where we're sitting with the audit that we've done, we think that board is clueless. We think
Do you
that
not
the
want to
GC
give them time?
Wait, ready?
Do you not want to give them time?
No, the problem is that this load shedding, we're beginning to ask a question. Who is benefiting out of this?
Who do you think? Who do you think? Who do you think?
We think that there's diesel, there are people who make money out of diesel. This load shedding is not neutral. There are individuals who stand to benefit. And unless we stand up and challenge every aspect to what confront us, I mean, they don't care about the billions that get lost when you switch off the lights.
When we come back, we'll ask our panel to respond to the poll. Don't go away and don't miss the second hour of our debate coming up shortly on SABC News YouTube channel, or visit bigdebate.live/watch. Also watch SABC 2 at 9 p.m. on Wednesday night to catch the repeat of the full 2 hours. See you in a moment.
On Trains Travel, we bring you a full guide on all things lifestyle related. With so much to discover, we give you comprehensive reviews of places to visit, music, travel, and food. We also explore the arts, whether on or off stage. All this and more, be sure to tune into Trends Travel, Saturdays at 5:30 p.m.
Complicated cases. Shubile.
Your black friends might be running this country, but I'm still the government on Bitterhook.
The poor child.
This kid was electrocuted by your fence.
Sorry, it's his own fault.
I put it to you that you have a personal interest in this case.
Under Section 300 of the Criminal Procedures Act 51 of 1977.
I urge the court to find in favor of the plaintiff.
The court finds the accused guilty.
Dedicated lawyers dig to the bottom and everyone gets peace. It's a pleasing judgment and it's justice for all on SABC Anko, DSTV channel 156.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was ons almal was ek ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke so ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e se makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, channel 404.
Hello again from the Big Debate live in Johannesburg. We're talking about long-term solutions to our energy crisis and a just transition to clean, safe and affordable energy for all. In a few weeks, the political parties will be looking for your vote in the elections. We've seen that energy is a crucial issue that should be in everyone's minds when deciding which party to vote for. In any case, let's hear the last word from our panel in this first half of our debate. Short and sharp closing comments. Mrs. Siwe.
I mean, really, I'm surprised that the Workers' Party did not talk, when we spoke about load shedding, about all the South Africans who have always been load shed. I mean, they didn't say a word about that. They're saying something about us sitting right here. Really, our forecast this year is that we're going to grow at about 1.3%. That was before we even factored in what was going to happen with load shedding. With that, we're going to grow even less. So if you had to take that just in the first quarter and subtract what's coming away from growth, just taking what's happening with load shedding, we are in very big trouble. If we're even going to try to grow faster than that 1.3%, if we don't sort out the electricity thing, the lights will go out and we won't grow at all. So it's a bigger situation than just Eskom and other things that happened in between and why we're in this trouble currently.
Tracy, your thoughts?
It is a bigger situation than just Eskom, and there are a lot of vested interests in this country that are keeping us in the position we're in, and they're not all government interests. We have to keep remembering that there's an enormous, very, very profitable fossil fuel industry and lobbying industry that is behind a lot of the lack of progress in relation to things like the carbon tax and that kind of thing. So climate change is happening. It affects the poorest and the most vulnerable in our communities. Like everything else, it affects them the worst. We have to have a proper conversation, and the government has to admit, as does Eskom, that coal is on its way out, and we have to make a plan for how we're going to transition to the next stage.
In a just way.
Kevin?
I think there's an opportunity with that World Bank loan. I think now that the World Bank is no longer protected from prosecution, that perhaps the Centre for Environmental Rights, joined by Just Share, joined by NUMSA, sues them for that 54 billion and uses that money to kickstart a socially owned renewables program as articulated by NUMSA.
What's Eskom up to? We have seen in the past that whenever there's load shedding, South Africans are being blackmailed and dirty tricks are used against us to agree of whatever dirty plan or corrupt plan that is on the table. And I think that this load shedding has got more into it. We don't know what's at play, but it's the political elites and those who are addicted to coal that are benefiting at the expense of our people's lives.
Evan?
Well, already IPPs are very expensive as things stand.
Is it 1.2 trillion, as you said in your statement?
It is expensive.
It will eventually cost
yes.
that, yeah?
I mean, we jumped on nuclear and we hold a view that we can close Eskom 4 holes. We can make sure that we defend the existing jobs. Between now and 2030, we can come up with an energy mix which will protect the current capacity and be able to create jobs with an energy mix that can have a socially owned renewable sector. And there should be no holy cows. The fact that everything about nuclear was bad, which was associated with President Zuma, it does not mean we must not sit down and basically say, what is the contribution of nuclear into the grid? Because these IPPs, they can only operate with the sun, as I said. They can only operate with the wind. Once it's off, we're back to the very same coal that we're talking about.
Eskom, closing comments from you very quickly. Eskom, let's give Eskom a chance to give their final thoughts, keeping in mind she's been there for a year.
First and foremost, I think on behalf of Eskom, would like to apologize to South Africans what has happened with regards to the load shedding.
Makoma says again.
What we're looking at the moment, we are basically trying to make sure then that at least the coal fleet that we have will reduce load losses that we have experienced in the past. And I will agree with Chris that it's going to be on and off. It is going to be, there will be times when there is no load shedding, and there will be times where there will be load shedding. And all we're asking is for South Africans to bear with us.
All right, South Africa, bear with us. That's the plea from Eskom. This was a week of load shedding. Lives and livelihoods were disrupted. Eskom is in a crisis, and yet South Africa has bountiful natural resources, including sun and wind. Do we have a strategy to keep the lights on and to give all South Africans direct control over the energy they need? You decide. Don't forget the elections on 8 May. Watch the second hour of this debate online now or on SABC on Wednesday at 10 p.m. From me, Ridi Klabi, bye for now.
voices. Shubile.
Your black friends might be running this country, but I'm still the government of Bitterhoek.
The poor child.
This kid was electrocuted by your fence. Sorry, it's his own fault.
Well, welcome back. I do hope that the government is at least watching this part of the debate, because it seems like we've got some solutions in the audience, but also to see firsthand the impact of corruption on the lives of people. We continue with our debate. Let's just hear from our audience members. We've got the Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee represented here today. Do you have a microphone? Is there something you wish to say? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening. We just want to know from Soweto, when is Eskom prepared to unbundle and include communities to its grid to distribute energy to the masses? As currently there are problems, and we are kept to be told this, told that, and it no more makes sense as to what is happening. But fair enough, would like to just find out, seeing that there's a representative from Eskom today.
Okay, all right, I'll give you a chance to just think that through. Let's take another question. The Workers' Party, yes?
Yes, thank you, Reddy. I think we are vividly clear that Eskom has put it on record to say the load shedding that happened in 2008 was based on corruption. But now the challenge is this current load shedding, how do we know it's not based on corruption? How do you investigate yourself? The board member has just alluded to say, no, we have issued each and every document to National Prosecuting Authority. But how do you investigate yourself? How do you know if the current board is not even corrupt themselves? We've heard the chairperson of the board has said he's directly conflicted because he is supplying Eskom. That is direct conflict of interest. So how do we know that they are not? Maybe the public processor must come in and they must investigate both the board and the current executive, because we don't think they're going to assist us in any way.
Nelly, how do you defend your board?
Probably maybe I need to start with the first question on unbundling. I'm sure a number of you actually heard the President in his State of the Nation address when he indicated that Eskom is going to be unbundled. And our view in that particular case is that the unbundling, it has got to make sure that we are able to identify the cost. We've been told a number of times that Eskom is overstaffed. Now, the question becomes, where are these people? Where is the overstaffing takes place? So it is our view that once we have a transparency in that regard, because once you have got separate generation and transmission and distribution, then it's more transparent. In fact, the regulator will have even better oversight so that you can be able to ask quality questions around some of the costs that we have incurred in the past. So that's basically what we have in mind in terms of unbundling. And it is our considered view, therefore, that with that unbundling, we therefore need to look at other options of supply, for example, like embedded generation, and then make sure that we create space for that to come to the grid. With regards to
the corruption and...
yeah. To be frank with you, I think it's such an unfair statement because it's not based on any facts. And until such time, somebody provide us with facts, or even the National Prosecuting Authority, if you provide them with facts, then we take it from there. But otherwise, at this point in time, I would say it's a very unfair statement.
Busisiwe, can you come in there on the unbundling? I mean, it's a buzzword, isn't it? We know that there is a political party, the DA, that's all for unbundling, and then there's another political party in government. Today, they say this publicly. The next day, they contradict themselves. The EFF has been very clear that they are against it. What does it all mean? What do you understand by it? Is it privatization of Eskom, at least the generation side?
I don't know. Nelly would know better what it actually
How does
means.
Industry
I think they exactly the way she's just told us now. We want to know where the mess exactly is. By unbundling the thing, you can actually figure out where the mess is. The fact that they said that the first bit that they're looking at is sort of the transmission element of it tells me distribution must be very complicated. And then it tells me the mess is actually the generation part of things. So that's what I'm understanding by it. Is it sort of a privatization? I mean, I don't know if it is. But I mean, is privatization such a bad thing? And I've just thrown the cat there among the pigeons. But is it such a bad thing?
In this audience,
in this particular audience. But I mean, if you think back to things let's take it there are certain things that the private sector can do better. If we think of something like Telkom, it's not we have privatized things before, and I've ruined the audience now, but we have privatized things before, and it has worked before. Is there a way to actually look at this thing again?
I'm thinking of Telkom, they like to use that example of Telkom, that smooth kind of partnership between private and government and so on. I mean, the word privatization, is that what it means? I know Nelly has just explained it now, but is that what is understood by it? And is it good for South Africa?
I don't have the answer to whether that's what's meant by privatization. And I agree that that it would result in them being a listed company on the JSE, for example, which in my opinion would be a disaster. But I don't see how Eskom...
For what reason? Tell us for what reason.
Because of the complete lack of accountability amongst listed companies in South Africa, and the way that shareholders just don't hold them to account and don't ensure that corporate governance is any good. I mean, we talk about Eskom, but corporate governance in the private sector is just as bad.
Phakamile?
Well, I think for us, it's very clear that this term unbundling is just a precursor to privatization, and we've been very clear as that as NUMSA. And nowhere in the world can you guarantee affordable electricity. There's no private company that can do that. The fact of the matter is, we are in a country where the majority of people cannot afford electricity. It can only be possible for affordable electricity to be distributed by the state, and that's it. And it would have to be under a socialist state, not under a corrupt capitalist ANC government.
Why are you laughing, Chris? Why are you laughing? Speak quickly. Why are you laughing?
Well, I'm sort of laughing because it implies that the current Eskom is better managed than the private sector could do it. The point is, it's not working. It hasn't been working for a long time, and we cannot carry on doing the same old thing that is not working forever. The current situation as we have it cannot continue. It's unsustainable. We have to do something different.
Give the mic to Patrick Bond just a moment, but we want to hear from economist Kanti Pai.
I just wanted to ask a question actually from the unions, because I think the question that arose was, where do the workers get the money to invest in energy? Then where are the workers investing their money if not in their own futures, in the futures of actually generating jobs for themselves in the future? Because I think if they don't do that now, where they actually continue to invest their money in this kind of economy, in the same thing that we've been doing all the time, they're going to find themselves 10 years, 20 years down the line out of work. And I think particularly also we must really change the way we think about privatization. That actually when we think about privatization, we think about Stokvels owning, because they can be private entities, right? They have private money in banks. That how do they not participate? How do they not own it? Because we keep saying we want to include people. We want an inclusive economy. But yet we are not letting people participate in an inclusive way in a in a sector that affects them so deeply, but also in a sector that actually it can be profitable and is central to the economy. So we need to actually change our minds about what we think about privatization.
You talked about workers' money, and I'm just thinking about the PIC, and look where we are with all of that. But anyway,
environment for people to be able to invest.
Makoma, speak louder. Is there an enable environment for?
Is there an enabling environment for people, for cooperatives to be able to start their own energy generation businesses? There's no enabling environment. When the IPPs were introduced, I think a group of workers tried also to register. I mean, where would people get almost 50,000 just to get forms to register for an IPP, where people would get all that kind of money, including the very green banks are not supporting?
Well, Lindiwe Zulu, Minister of Small Business and Development, that long term, I hope you're listening and can phone in and tell us what your plan is, particularly because you're not just the minister, but you're also a senior ANC NEC member. And if one looks at the ANC manifesto, you will know that in 2009, they didn't have much to say about energy. And then later on, there was a big emphasis on nuclear energy. And then this time around, they are talking about IPPs, but they're not talking about how all of this is actually going to be done. They're not talking about they're not talking about the current players in energy, how they're going to be affected, and where the new players are going to come from. You're dying to say something, Kevin?
I think we need to look at two things. If unbundling is not a synonym for privatization, why is it that Patrice Motsepe was issuing denials? Why were the media looking at him? We also have to look at the fact that across the world, the energy systems that have privatized are now turning back. We're seeing deprivatization in Latin America. We're seeing renationalization in Australia. We're seeing remunicipalization in Germany. Why? Because the fossil fuel industry is subsidized to the tune of $5 trillion a year, $5 trillion a year, and the renewable IPPs can't compete.
Patrick, it feels as if we're caught between a rock and a hard place, because as Kevin, as you were talking about those countries that are going back and reversing and nationalizing, I'm thinking that we have a corrupt state. So who do we trust?
But not only that, I think you've got a state that has no vision, that does not champion. We don't have a state that believes that it must intervene in the economy on behalf of the people. You've got a state that is carrying a knobkiri, is not prepared to intervene, is not prepared to redirect the economy. If we had that state will facilitate a discussion. For instance, there could be PIC that is in a crisis now. It is a fact, what you're raising, that workers' retirement funds should be deployed to make sure that whilst workers are working, they benefit when they retire, they can still have a lifespan that to live a good life before they perish in life.
Decent life.
Decent life. I mean, the bottom line is that we don't have that state. And we're building a socialist revolutionary workers, but because we're sick and tired of voting every year with the hope that those who go to parliament are going to champion a revolutionary agenda. There is no revolutionary agenda in this country that seeks to address this particular question.
Patrick?
I know Comrade Jim won't give up on the state, especially a state that's done ARVs, the antiretroviral rollouts, to 6-7 million people and raised our life expectancy from 52 to 64. It can be done with the right pressure from civil and uncivil society. But the dilemma is, if we have a corrupt state, it actually, Transparency International says 73rd out of 180. The dilemma is really what Tracy's driving at. Our corporates ranked number 1 in the world in the PwC biannual economic crime for corporate corruption. And that's the whole gamut from bribery and cybercrime and money laundering. And it seems to me, if you take our electricity demand, and it's just basically 3 dozen big corporates that consume about 40%. They call themselves the energy intensive users group. And the number 1 is BHP Billiton, the world's largest mining house. And they're getting their electricity in Richards Bay at 1/10 of what we're all paying. And that's about 5% of the grid. That to me is where we also should, I think Comrade Jim would agree, open up the question who's winning and who's losing from not just Makoma, a coal-addicted, but a corporate-addicted Eskom. Why, Nelly, are you still giving BHP Billiton electricity at 1/10 of what we're all paying?
But I think the issue, Patrick, yes, it's corporate, but capitalism is corruption. As long as you have got a system of greed that does not champion humanity, I mean, it's a process of profit making. Those who have got money, they will always win the day. You got politicians, you vote them into power, they come back speaking English without science. So we need to mobilize. So we need to mobilize the working class as a class to take charge of its future and to fight for it.
What did you say? We also have unions. What was that about?
The workers' money in this country invested in companies on the stock exchange, wanting a return. We don't engage with those companies. The people you pay to manage your money, you don't hold them accountable. You don't get them to go to those companies and say, stop exploiting the workers, stop polluting the air and the water, stop paying people low wages. So we say all this on one level, but on the other level, all our money is invested in these very corporates that we're all criticizing.
Is that a new challenge for you, Urban?
No, it's an own consistent challenge. Trustees, and they take decisions if they were to be capacitated enough. Ready, capitalism is brutal. Every day we defend jobs that they are dealing with. Every day those trustees are a center of contestation.
Are unions bold enough to withdraw their cash from these companies that are corrupt?
Of course they should.
Because it links to what Kanti Pai. Hold on, where's the microphone? Kanti Pai, that's exactly where you were going about agency of the workers and, yep.
Absolutely. I hear Mr. Jim's point about not being capacitated, but who is going to capacitate them if not the leadership?
Not join the Socialist Revolutionary Workers Party.
So you're saying they must take their money?
They need you need to be capacitated, because actually this whole thing about the decision making of short-termism, about investing in companies and in funds that are only, and then you tell those funds to return money in 3 months, in 6 months, instead of actually long-term, so that actually the workers continue to benefit. I think the question about the state is important, but also unions should not sit back and keep pointing fingers at the state. They should say, what can we do today with our power and what we can do now to push these things.
Okay. You were saying, sir, you were saying.
What I was basically saying is that we have public sector unions, but we've got the whole union movement having enough power to influence decisions within the Development Bank of South Africa, within the PIC, because they have a say. It's their monies that are there. They need to decide how their money is being invested. They need to decide.
Okay. And we had a question from Bra. Yes?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Akani Ezra Paloi. Jimmy, my question is directed to you. Firstly, Jimmy, we just heard from Eskom now. They're actually struggling to actually construct a simple coal system. Are you going to trust them to build a nuclear plant? You know how dangerous nuclear is. Waste involved in that. You cannot allow such things to happen. My second question is towards Eskom. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? You guys are currently using IPPs, right? But how much of that energy can you actually use on our grid at this point in time? Because you're still paying them, but most of the energy that they generate, you actually can't even use. So why are you even paying them?
Okay.
No,
right.
actually that is not true. Okay. At the moment, we're actually having about 1,200 megawatts from IPPs. So to say that they are not generating energy is not really correct.
Can we just demystify the IPPs? What are they? How are you working with them and all of that?
The IPPs get procured by government, okay? And then once the procurement process has been completed, then Eskom has got to sign a long-term agreement called a PPA.
There were seven that were with 7 IPPs that were signed?
No, no. It has been happening since 2013. So the 27 one were controversial because there was a dispute between Eskom at that particular point in time. There was a dispute between Eskom and everybody else because they had a dispute with government, they had a dispute with IPPs. So that was the main challenge that we had at the time. So during the day, they do actually deploy the energy. In fact, I would suggest that they go to the system operations, then they can see when they get deployed.
There was a question also for NUMSA. You also had a question for, and it was about running nuclear. How can you trust the state?
No, I was not trusting. I was not trusting any state. Any state in a capitalist mode of production is an organ of oppression. So I was making a simple point that we should be sitting down and debate the energy mix which is needed in this country. And if we must introduce renewables, they must be socially owned and they must be at a price that the country can afford. And as these renewables, you know, when they were connected, is it 2016? In 2016, we could produce a kilowatt at Eskom for 42 cents. We went and connected IPPs for R2.14, and Eskom sold at a loss for about 9 billion in 2016. You can carry on. In fact, by 2022, we would have lost about 100 billion. And the cheap argument that gets made. No, but please, guys, people must read. People must analyze. The cheap argument that gets made is that, no, we shouldn't worry about this because this is a pass-through to the consumer.
And the new IPP is a bit cheaper because the old ones...
When it comes to IPPs, then you get a minister. By the way, I saw what in Business Day today. It looks like Minister
Sunday Times,
Sunday Times, yes. He likes to sign. He already signed a deal in
the oil, the oil alleged.
But I think I've been knowing him. He likes to sign. He doesn't read. Now, really, the point I'm making is that the cheap argument, which is a lie, is that no. Only when it comes to IPPs, it's a pass-through. I want to tell you that everything that is a cost at Eskom, employees and everything is a pass-through. It is the working class, it is consumers that are paying for. I don't want to define what is happening in Eskom, supported by the board and Eskom. It is not in the best interest of this country.
Why are you sighing?
I'm sighing because we need to acknowledge that the independent power producers that have been signed for are renewable energy power producers, though as coming from communities, we do not agree with the way they are packaged. But I think
the technology itself and the movements and the impact on the environment.
And the signing of the IPPs or getting the IPPs on the grid has actually assisted us in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and also contributing towards decent jobs.
But the point I'm making, our representative when it comes to energy should be NERSA. Why NERSA didn't call public hearings before those IPPs were connected to the national grid?
They were called, there were public hearings. The community was able to make its presentations, and this is where organizations like EarthLife, like Greenpeace and others, we had said that these IPPs, yes, we agree that it's a step towards reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but we don't agree with how they are packaged because communities are not, there's no enabling environment for ordinary people, cooperatives to be able to generate electricity.
That as NUMSA, when it comes to energy, we never miss any public hearings. If they were made, they were targeted, they were meant to basically consult few organizations, not the majority of the working class. We were not consulted as the working class. We represent members there, but we were not consulted.
Okay. All right. Okay, the comment there. So hold on. So Evan says we're not consulted. weren't invited to any public hearings. So the lady there says, I think it was the time that you were fighting so viciously with COSATU, so you missed your question, please.
Saying that there's this illicit financial flow at the Eskom. I think Eskom has to publish what they pay, because we as taxpayers, we have a right to know what you are paying.
Where our money is going.
Where is our money going?
To whom?
Right?
And to whom? Is Eskom going to be more transparent this time around? More oversight? Publish every single transaction, what it's going to cost us, and the real figures, not like Medupi and Kusile.
Okay. What I can say is that every year, Eskom obviously publishes its books. But more than anything else, during the NERSA hearing, that's when the costs are really unpacked. What is it that you are paying for primary energy? What is it that you are paying for diesel? And how big is your labor cost? So all that gets unpacked during the NERSA hearing.
What I'm saying is Eskom, what I'm saying about the cost of IPPs, it is actually in the Eskom own studies and how they have defined what is going to be the impact of IPPs to the national grid.
Kevin, how do we navigate our way around this? I mean, I'm thinking about a country like Germany that has stopped building coal-fired power stations. They're hoping to move completely to renewables by 2038. I hear it looks like there's no debate around IPPs, but Irvin has raised raised some very valid points, but equally we've heard some very valid points about the impact on the environment. If I remember correctly, it was estimated that Medupi would be firing off about 22 million tons of carbon dioxide. In fact, it's 32 million. Am I right? That is a crisis. We need to solve it, but here are the real structural problems that have been raised. How do we solve that? Climate crime. In fact, I've just remembered that Section 24 of the Constitution, actually, it is a basic right to live in a country where you are not compromised by ecological degradation. It is in the Constitution. So we are being robbed and our constitutional rights are being violated.
But I'd like to answer that. I mean, you bring up the example of Germany. What they mean by remunicipalization is taking the power back, not only from the private sector, but also from the national grid, and letting the municipalities control their own energy. And this is something that NUMSA themselves have brought up, decentralizing the power grid. Now, this is going to happen.
To be fair, it's something that the DA is pushing in the Western Cape. They say they've got legislation to enable 85% of municipalities to go this way.
But at the same time, solar...
They are confused. You'll clear up the confusion. Yeah?
No. At the same time, solar is illegal and you're not allowed to collect rainwater. I mean, they are confused.
Okay,
no,
so
but the IPPs, maybe we abbreviate too much, is independent power producers. But the experience is that they cannot operate without connecting to the national grid. If you listen to my man, he thinks that you can have an IPP that can just run a particular municipality without being connected to the national grid. That's not just possible.
That lady there has had the mic for a very long time. I beg your pardon, and then I'm coming to you.
After a long time,
Nelly, you want to clarify something in a moment? No, okay.
Okay, yeah. On the beginning, when we started to debate, there was a question that was asked, and Nelly said, when she was answering the question, said they do care for the communities or the citizens. But to my opinion, that is not true, Nelly. Because at Tembelihle, I'm Simpiwe from Tembelihle. At Tembelihle, we fought for electricity for 17 years. And then finally, we've got the electricity. They said to us, it's electricity at mixed grid. When I'm saying the ESCOM is not caring about us, when you go right now to Tembelihle, those mixed grid is not working. Only the frames that are left, because the solar was stolen, because the solar were not producing whatsoever that they are needed to do. We even have the boxes that are not working. So the ESCOM is not caring for us. They did that, as she said, they've got short-time solutions. They did that because they wanted to loot money from ESCOM.
So maybe that's a municipality that's not fixing things when they break?
Even ESCOM, I think that they need to follow up things, because the money's went out. They took money out from our tax money, and then so they must follow things. Uguti, what is happening? Where's the money? What happened to that money?
Okay, all right. We have a question there, and then I'm coming to you this side.
Thank you.
Where's the microphone?
I want to touch on two things. First of all, let's look at ESCOM. Before we talk about privatizing, let's look at the skill level, especially at the board, on the board of ESCOM. Ready, you are about to have problems if you've got a taxi owner, a pharmacist, and an accountant trying to solve your energy problems. Trust me, you are bound to have problems. Secondly, let us talk about the issue that Comrade Jim raised. This is now the commander of all the forces in the SRWP.
Commander, you also adopted the language. Oh, that's interesting. Anyway.
No, that is a communist language. It's not by,
carry on.
by other red. But Comrade raised something that he raised the issue of nuclear. And let me tell you from a privileged position that nuclear is a ESCOM program that was proposed to the government, because ESCOM, they are experts when it comes to nuclear. They've got Quebec power station, very safe. It can withstand a magnitude 7 earthquake, that station. It is one of the best run power stations, nuclear stations in the whole world. It holds a record for a unit that has run for more than 400 days. First thing. Second thing.
Quickly, we have to move on, yeah?
Second thing, the radiation that we are talking about, currently in the world, there are 449 nuclear power stations. Those power stations, they are used to produce power for one of the super economic powers. Now, if we in South Africa, we reject nuclear power. Yes, nuclear power. We need to come up with solutions. And trust me.
It sounds like you're saying we
me.
shouldn't reject it. You're
Trust
saying
me.
if we reject it, we should come up with solutions. It sounds like you're saying we shouldn't reject it. It should be
I'm
still
not
be
saying we
part of
shouldn't
our
reject it.
nuclear-
I'm saying if we reject it, we should come up with solutions. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I'm also saying that IPPs,
Okay, wait.
IPPs, as it stands, we've got load shedding
Okay,
today.
I must give other
and
people a
we've got
chance.
IPPs.
Okay, speak, sir. Outa is represented here
Okay.
today. Okay,
Yes,
we'll
good
answer that.
evening.
Yeah.
I'm Ronald
Outa,
Chauke
what do you
from
say?
Outa. Yeah, I'd just like to raise a few things, and then that would be my
Very, very
comment.
few things.
Yes. First and foremost, Reddy, I would like to agree with Jim. We need an energy codes. These issues which we are talking about are very, very complex. Some of them is not easy to resolve, trust me. So number two, ESCOM unbundling, trust me, is the best thing to happen. We need it. ESCOM, as it stands, this business model is not sustainable, and we are in trouble.
Your neighbor, Kantipa, is shaking his head.
So
but
since
anyway,
when we are in trouble, we need to find solutions that will help us to sustain ourselves and move forward. We can't continue to be in the dark.
And how do you
That-
protect unbundling from all the
It's simple.
cronyism and the...
When you unbundle ESCOM, you create what we call SOCs, what we call state-owned enterprises. Those companies are government-owned. So those employees are not going to be kicked out of their jobs. We are going to make sure that we come up with proper business models for those enterprises. And then if ever we are having what we call excess workforce, then we will talk with Mr. Jim to say that,
You'll
Mr.
fire
Jim,
some workers. That's
Mr.
what you
Jim,
mean.
these
You
workers,
will
we
train
can
some work-
reskill them, we can upskill them, we can redeploy them, whatever the case may be.
Are you
Let me
open to
pass
some
from
workers being reskilled, yes or no?
No. I think one of the things we're not talking about is that a black sheep here is basically ESCOM. Because when it comes, you see the deals that were signed, they are followed by a must principle. That if, for instance, you generate energy from a power station and it goes to the grid, and the IPPs generate energy, which Umama says they are doing it very well, which goes to the grid, you sell first the IPP energy, but when it comes to ESCOM, when they deliver that energy, there are no guarantees for ESCOM that it will go back. Izinyoka, the municipalities are not paying, and municipalities are not paying because the ANC government has embarked on a belt tightening in terms of austerity measures. There are no allocation to those particular municipalities.
I'll give you a chance. You can finish your points, yeah?
In that one, as I said, we need to unpack and understand the energy sector. Actually, this session was supposed to be hosted by government. If ever our government, as Mr. Jim said, has a vision.
Because they are telling you.
So, and then lastly, what we need to do, basically, we as ordinary citizens, we need to help ESCOM to keep the lights on.
Okay.
Because it's not sustainable to stay in
But for a
darkness,
person
eh?
who loses
And
their
then
job,
people
it's
will
not
compromise
helping
us.
at all.
No, but there are better ideas which we can put on the table and resolve the country's problems.
Well, let's put them on the table. I mean, Nelly, I almost do feel sorry for you in a way, because I must just tell our audience that the minister was supposed to be here today, and he did cancel at the last minute, Rob Davis. And then we tried other government departments, Treasury as well, because a lot of the questions that you have must be answered by the government. And at the very, very last minute, I'm talking less than 24 hours, Nelly agreed to come on the show. So we're absolutely grateful that you agreed to come. But these are real problems and solutions that people have put on the table. And I do think that question from Patrick Bond on BHP, was it that question about those old contracts that ESCOM signed, where people who actually have the money and can afford to pay more are paying 1% of...
Can I say, we're busy. People say, no, there's a state capture. We dealt with it. We're seeing state capture consolidating in front of our eyes. If you were to go and look at the numbers, from 2008 to 2015, the primary coal cost, which basically those cost-plus mines were built by taxpayers' money. The state's supposed to slant the guitar to determine to those cost-plus mines the cost the money they will make out of it. Now, from 2008, year on year, they receive 17% increase on primary coal, which basically from 2015, the increase is about 300,000, when inflation was hovering around 74%. Let's check, I just forget the number now. You can check last year, they also get the increase. So meaning that the cost plus mines, I mean, those guys are basically printing money.
Do you understand
out of
what
the
is what that is? What is that? Cost plus mines. Just break it down for us.
Okay. Now, by cost plus man, I mean mines. What ESCOM did, took money of me and
Our
you,
money.
It built ESCOM mines. These mines used to belong to ESCOM, supplying to the grid. They were handed over to the private sector. What people are saying we must do now, this unbundling, is privatization. The ANC government said, let's now, despite the fact that they can't manage cost plus mines, they now want to hollow out. And Nelly, we should be honest.
Okay, so entities that were built with taxpayer.
They want to hollow out the actual heart of ESCOM and hand it over. Privatization is not a debate, they are doing it. When they decommission, they connect in the place of a power station and IPP. That's privatization.
Tracy, I do want you to come in there because your focus is on, what shall I say, responsible, equitable investment, social justice as well. What is your comment to that?
Well,
this is not a new story. You've heard about
completely
BHP.
agree. And now, of course, what's happening
You must say
is
loud when you agree.
I completely. And now what's happening is that these companies are all quickly unbundling their coal assets and going overseas and leaving devastated communities, destroyed environments, because ESCOM is responsible for rehabilitating those mines. And of course, ESCOM doesn't have the money to do that. So these very same people who've been printing money for the last however many decades are now taking all that money to England and Australia and leaving the workers
And why that
with
is not
nothing.
state capture?
Okay,
it is.
Nelly, what are you going to do? What do you say? Are you going to report back to Rob Davis and ministers and tell them that they need to answer these questions where stakeholders are affected, where the country is affected, and also questioning some of the unjust decisions that were made?
Okay, I think what has happened in the past 5 years, the key department that was supposed to come up with policies that are going to govern the sector, make this sector work, experience a high turnover of ministers. And as such, what we're seeing today is the effects of that. Because as it's correctly being stated, this is the debate that should be led by government. So this is the debate that we should be able to have around the issue of
But on the
energy mix.
harmful contracts, for example, the BHP one, what autonomy do you have as ESCOM? I mean, your chairperson said at the press conference that these are extraordinary times. And because these are extraordinary times, you need extraordinary solutions, which means revisiting and being radical, as it were, on those.
No, in fact, what actually happened, we've been instructed to look at all the onerous contract.
Did you hear that, everybody? They've been instructed to look at them?
Yeah,
and look for what?
At all the onerous contracts, not just the BHP Billiton one, all the onerous contract, and look at possibilities of renegotiating those contracts. That was a cabinet instruction.
Okay, so that's significant. Remember this one. Your question.
Mine just a little comment, the question direct to the Jim.
Why? Because you're here.
Okay, I think transition is necessary because renewable energy is necessary. Because we cannot just keep on losing life because of coal, saying that no, things cannot change. Things have to change. I think when we are gathered here we are here to try to change something. And all of us, if we come together and debate issues, as Jimmy said, this thing must be debated. I think we'll go somewhere else.
Okay.
I'm not political and I'm not a politician. I want to ask you direct question, Mr. Jim. Social Workers Party. Ono tshwana le gore na le party tše dingwe tše re di bonang di tlhaya gona bjalena kere bjale lena ge re ka le voutela ra le fa ditulo le ka se le kwa le tša le kgora then la tla la re jikela na.
Okay, so the gentleman, what's your name, sir? Pitso says, we are seeing so many parties emerging. I mean, new parties are just ubiquitous. They outnumber, well, that's an exaggeration, but there have been a lot of new parties that have emerged. So he asks, if you say we must vote for your party, how are we guaranteed that when your tummies are full, that when you are made and are up there, you will not turn against us, and us being those who entrusted you with our votes. Socialist Workers' Party, what say you?
I think you should vote for the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party. No, you should vote for the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party.
Did you hear?
Secondly, I think we are a party that is ideologically clear, that to defend the gains and to pursue class struggle, which is the only guarantee for change, is going to require mobilizing the working class as a class for itself. The state is a bourgeois state. We're contesting these elections. If we get seats, there will be comrades who will go to parliament, but we will outside mobilize the working class, raise levels of consciousness of the working class to that of a dictatorship of a class that exploit. The issue is, we in this country, comrade, we need a revolutionary agenda which is rooted to our people. I promise you nothing but class struggle.
Chris Yellen looks petrified. You look petrified. What's happening?
If I may move away from politics,
Yes,
back to
I
energy,
was
back to energy. I'd like to just propose a future that is not privatization, but is increasing the public ownership of energy. I'm talking about community ownership, worker ownership, NUMSA ownership, NUM ownership, people power, the democratization of energy, because the future of energy is not mega power stations. It's not Medupi or Kusile or another Koeberg, another nuclear. No, the future is small scale embedded generation. Millions of generators owned by people, by communities, by you, by your members. This is the future of energy. And this is the future we need to embrace as part of a transition. No
Does that threaten
new
Eskom?
coal. No new nuclear. That is the future.
Yeah, I mean, just to cut in here from Greenpeace, I think the biggest piece about this debate is that there's been a long history of the discussion since 1998 when we had the first white paper. And in that white paper, we had the whole idea of unbundling, as well as the idea of probably privatization and part privatization of actual distribution through the Reds, when municipalities would take up most of the control of distribution power. But then that left out. That stopped working after 2008 when we then had the new Energy Act. So we don't have an actual energy policy. When people talk about energy policy, they're talking about the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, or the Integrated Energy Plan. Those are plans which are based on a policy framework, which we don't have. So I agree fully well with Erwin on this one, that we do not have a vision because we don't have a policy. We have a legislative tool, we have a policy tool, which is the Integrated Resource Plan, but we don't have the policy that informs us, that tells us what vision we're going towards, where the just transition is going to be. But just to come back to something that's more to the ground. In the beginning, we spoke about the health impacts. We spoke about the occupational health of people going underground. The debate has gone so far off to the high level that we're no more talking about how we're going to address the fact that a person is here who has not been paid for 5 months. Right now, we've got a person right here. And he's not the only one. And it's not the only one. And we should be talking about, at least in the interim, right now, when we're here with all these collective minds, what can we do? This is wrong. And they're still going underground, producing the coal, dying from the pollution, being sick from the pollution, and or not coming back.
I mean, that's absolutely true, Nelly. So, Eskom is in the situation in which it finds itself now. And you were very subtle when you talked about the trains that just go missing. And I think all of us know what that means. And these are the costs of corruption. The people who do corruption don't lose their livelihoods. And I suspect that we need to have a system, a way of doing things in South Africa where the people that we care about the most are the workers. The people that we care about the most are the vulnerable ones, because the decision makers are not affected by these decisions that you make. And that's it. Let's go back then to that question as you've just challenged us. Before we do that, let's go back to that. What are you going to do? When you sit again at a board meeting, what are we going to do and say to these mining communities?
As far as I'm concerned, and also what have been discussed at the board level, is also our own transition towards low carbon. And at this point in time, what we're hoping that this is going to be done at a national level, say for example by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, and then what we will do, will fit in our plans within that. So far there's quite a lot of discussions in the Planning Commission on how to transition from carbon to low carbon, but so far we have not received anything. But what we are planning at the moment as a company itself is to start looking at how can we make sure that those workers, not only they are either reskilled or they are
or they paid what they owed.
Oh, okay.
The last 5 months, can we start there?
No, but that one already, that's unfair because that's Optimum Mine. It's not ESCOM. Okay.
Can I say something on Optimum? I think if we had a caring government, I don't think this really goes to her.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can go back to Vierleza, all the victims of the so-called
Denel one?
All we have witnessed workers who have been thrown into poverty. The ANC government keep quiet. I mean, for me, this government should have nationalized and stop talking. Should have nationalized those mines and make sure that workers do not lose their job. So
is that it?
It will be interesting to know who own Optimum Mine as we speak.
The Swedish
It will be interesting to know.
Wasn't there a Swedish company that was meant to come in? Yeah.
Okay, hi Randy. Ukuba kujima concern ngendaba emisebenzi ne ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi for who, because I believe in one thing, that people who stays next to the mines, they don't have access to job. Gulama mines, they don't have access to electricity, they don't have access to water. Abantu abasebenza kulama mines are people who coming from their neighboring countries who come and work here. I've got a proof of that because I come from Diepkloof. We've got mines around Diepkloof, Orlando, Meadowlands, and abantu be community, they are not working there. Okay. And then secondly, we need transition renewable energy in a serious note. I think most of us here were above 50. So we are a living coffin. What about abantwana bethu? They are growing up now. Already we are affected by this cold. People are dying, and they'll say they are asthmatic, but they don't know what's the cause of that. It's heredity from home, and because they don't know. And why don't you even call the Department of Health to be here? Because people are dying because of these mines, but nobody says a good thing because of these mines.
Okay, I think Kevin. I do want to come to you because you've written about this. You've written about the mining communities, and some of them are just ghost towns now as the mining companies just depart. I'm thinking about Lephalale, and there were promises of employment. I think in 2001 it was 18% unemployment, in 2011 22%. The housing boom just collapsed. People moved to that area because there were houses being the housing boom was promised. It didn't happen, and that's what you're talking about, and also talking about pollution as well.
There's a direct overlap. I mean, when you look at the Bakgatla Bakgafela or the Bapo Bamakhali, 25 billion rand was stolen from the Bakgatla Bakgafela. All of that money is in offshore tax havens, not paying tax to this country. The Bapo Bamakhali, 800 million rand was stolen. It's in something called Account D. Now, the extractive industries, when you look at Kolobeni, and I got back from Kolobeni on Friday, Mr. Mantashe is going back down there for one reason only. For one reason only. 9 out of 10 of new mining rights applications in this country are happening in the former Bantustans. And the Interim Protection of Informal Land Rights Act, which was passed in this country in 1996 to protect the security of tenure of the 17 million South Africans who are residents of the former Bantustans, has been ignored for the last 2 decades by governments and by the mining companies. It allows them to go in there and do what they want. They don't have to get the consensus of the community according to MPRDA. All they have to do is consult, which means they hire a consultant and they buy off a chief and they do what they want. And these mining communities get poisoned and they get kicked off their land and they get nothing.
And in Kolobeni there have been some assassinations too.
In Kolobeni there have been 12 assassinations. Kolobeni is South Africa's standing rock. They're standing for food sovereignty, water sovereignty, which is as important as energy sovereignty.
Indeed. Let's get a question from you, sir.
The question of defending defending workers' rights to work is a very critical issue. We have an unemployment rate officially of about 28%. Unofficially, it's more than 40%. So it's not only the task of unions to defend those jobs, it is a social issue. In our assessment, we always talk about how the national bourgeois are parasitic. In South Africa, the ANC has stolen everything. This government has stolen everything, and it's time to get rid of them. But finally, I want to say...
Quickly, we've got 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute. We talk about climate change. And we've just had the incidents in Mozambique and Zimbabwe and Malawi.
Okay, I can't give you that whole 1 minute. We've got to hear from...
No, we have to point out that it is capitalism that is responsible for this climate change. And that in order to change society, we need to overthrow capitalism.
I'm going to give you... I'm going to give you the last word. What do you want to see happening right now? Keeping in mind that Eskom is not the employer, but of course a stakeholder in this chain. What do you want them to take to their suppliers? What message?
Sisi, engikhala ngako manje ku Eskom. Singabasebenzi base Optimum sikhipha amalahle emgodini. Ngicela nizwisise lento le. Thina abasebenzi basemgodini asicabangelwa total. Example yalapha eGold Mine.
Bheka lapha, it's fine.
eGold Mine kusesena abafowethu ebehla ngecontain nisacabanga lokho. Right. eMarikana sinabafowethu ebashonile ba underground. Eskom yenze nathi i-agreement yokuthi sikhiphela ilahle emgodini. Engikubonayo mina amaguptas anomthetho kwendlula ANC.
Okay,
why ngisho njalo? I-government sayivotela i-ANC kusuka kwaMandela. Nangicabanga singabantu abamnyama sonke besik-ANC. Kwabe sekwenzekani? Into eyenzekayo. Ubani ongahlala ku that 5 months angaholi kuthuleke kuthi du. And number 2, sinabantwana basezikolweni legezi asiyitholi thina ngoba umasipala sikhona ngumbhadala babuyi kithi bag basitshele ukuthi senza njani.
Okay, so Ujati is asking awuna microphone abakuzwa ithi summarize. Okay. So Jeffrey is rightly asking. So he's rightly asking who can survive without payment for 5 months? Who can survive? And also, even though I said Eskom is not the employer, the fact of the matter is that it is the contracts that were signed, right, that have impoverished people. It is taxpayers' money that was given to Gupta-owned Tegeta for these contracts, and he believes that's why we are here. And the most powerful thing that you said is that Gupta anomthetho ukudlula ANC. So basically, we voted for the ANC, but the people who were in charge and were making decisions were the Guptas, so they were the government. How are you going to protect the workers?
Well,
what contracts are you going to not sign?
No, already. I mean, it's a complex one. I think we should be knocking sense to the ANC government. They are in power. They must nationalize those mines and continue to give contract to those workers to be able to work whilst we're busy discussing what is the future of a mixed energy that we need in this country. This thing of harping, no, we are religious, we're not corrupt, and so forth. We have done
the evidence is there.
It does not deliver to the poor workers who are starving.
Indeed. And just very quickly, I don't think we answered that World Bank question adequately. I mean, should we be financing that debt, given that the corruption has basically been confirmed by Hitachi paying that particular fine? Should we pay it? Or it's just debt?
Judgment in the Supreme Court in America that says we can now take people like the World Bank on, prosecute them. I think it's an option, as Kevin said. I don't think we should be paying back that money.
Do you agree? Okay, so we have run out of time, but I hope that all of this has given you food for thought to think deeply about how powerful that X is, who you are empowering to act on your behalf as a citizen, on behalf of vulnerable members of society, because sometimes we get very self-absorbed. We look at things only if they affect us. How many of you, it's a powerful question, I know I can survive without 1 month's salary, never mind 5 months. We need to think carefully about the decisions that we make, even as consumers, the corporates that we support. And most importantly, as we see these heart-wrenching images coming out of Mozambique, that is the effect of climate change. We need to think and contend with that reality. Thank you for watching The Big Debate.